Hi, this is Joe Chambers from ChambersCustom Pistols, and this is 1911 University. Many of you have asked me to do a takedown video on a 2011 style pistol. This is one of our 2019s. A lot of you recognize this gun. This is a night fighter that's come in for a little bit of a tune-up, a refresh. So I want to use this gun to show you how to properly take one of these guns down completely. And you're going to need some tools. I have a ChambersCustom takedown set here. I have a little small flathead screwdriver, a couple of Allen wrenches, and a bent paper clip. And that's basically all you need to do to take this gun entirely down. So the first thing we have to do is we have to double check the gun and make sure that it's empty. There's no magazine in it, there's no bullets in it, so we're safe to work on the gun. And we're going to lock the slide back like that to slide lock. We're going to take this little paper clip, and there's a little tiny hole down inside on the guide rod, and you're going to put this paper clip in the hole on the guide rod, and you're going to slowly release the slide to take the tension off of it. And you're going to get the slide stop located in the spot on the slide where you can depress the slide stop pin. And push it out. You're going to pull the slide stop out, and now you can pull the slide off the frame. We're going to set the frame out of the way for just a minute while we do the upper. Now your recoil assembly is captured, and you can simply, well, this paper clip is not made for that direction. We have to go the other direction. You can simply push the recoil assembly out the back of the gun like that. And now if you need to take the recoil assembly apart, you simply depress the recoil plug and you can pull the spring and plug apart on the gun. We'll set that out of the way. Next you have your barrel. Now if you have a regulator or a light fighter that has a compensator or a cone barrel, the barrel will simply slide out. But this gun has a bushing, so we're going to take a bushing wrench. We're going to turn the bushing counterclockwise to expose the lug inside, and we're simply going to use the barrel as a slide hammer to get the bushing out like that. Now you have the bushing out of the gun and off the barrel. We'll set that out of the way for now. Now we have the extractor firing pin set up. We're going to take our mainspring housing tool. We're going to depress the firing pin and slide the firing pin plate down. Your firing pin and spring will come out. And then we have these little tools that I designed and made for the shop that allow you to pull the extractor out. You can also use a small screwdriver, or you can use your mainspring housing tool, and from the inside you just press the hook over the breech face, and then you can take your screwdriver and you can pry your extractor out of the gun. Now your whole top end is taken apart. You have your extractor, your firing pin plate, your slide stop. There's your barrel bushing, your guide rod, spring, and plug. That's all done. We'll set all that over here out of the way because we're going to tackle the lower. A lot of you know how to take the upper off your gun and clean all that, and it's pretty simple really. But let's tackle the lower. These guns are a little different than a single stack because you've got screws to deal with in order to get all the parts out of the lower. If you want to get the trigger out, it's really not necessary to take the trigger out of the gun, but one thing you do want to be very careful of is you don't want to drop the hammer with no slide on the gun. You'll do damage to the top inside of the frame there. So be very careful during this next part. We're going to set the gun away from us like this, and we're going to work the thumb safeties up and down while we pull the thumb safety out away from us on the non-ejection port side. And you're going to see that it separates, and we can pull it out, and keeping a little bit of tension on there as we pull it out will prevent the plunger tube spring and pins from flying out. And this plunger tube, the other pin is still in there, so we'll just leave that in there. You don't get a lot of grit in there, but if you do, you can push that out with a little pin and clean the plunger tube channel out. Now we take the ejection port side and we pivot the thumb safety up and we slide it out. and you'll see that these thumb safeties that we use, they're slotted so they go together like this, and you have to be very careful not to bend them, because if you bend them when you're taking them in or out, it will prevent the thumb safeties from going back in, and it will prevent the thumb safeties from working. We'll set those out of the way. Then you can hold the gun like you would shoot it, grasp the hammer between your finger and thumb, and slowly lower it down so that it's not under tension anymore. Now we have a grip safety here that's hanging out, and we have a hammer that's down. We can take our mainspring housing punch and a hammer and gently tap this pin out. And pull it out the back side. Pull our punch out, take our mainspring, our mag well off, and slide the mainspring housing down, and that's going to let the grip safety drop free. We're going to slide this out. Inside of the mainspring housing is your mainspring and 3 pins. You have the top retainer pin, you have the top plunger pin, and you have the bottom retainer pin. You only need to take this apart every, I don't know, 25 or 30,000 rounds to clean it. Otherwise, just leave it together. We'll take it apart in a minute so I can show you. Here's your sear spring, a little bit dirty, needs cleaned a little bit. You have your hammer, pin, and you can press that out with your finger and pull that out on the side like that. Set that out of the way, and then you can take your hammer out. Set it out of the way. Then we have the sear pin. Pull it out from the non-ejection port side, and you can bump the frame like that, and there's your sear and your disconnector, and they come out. Now your sear and your disconnector, they go in the gun like that. That's how they go in. You can put them in, put them back in like that, or you can put them in one at a time, but the disconnector has to go in the gun before the sear. Now you have your mag catch, and you can see that little screw inside the mag catch, and you can feel that it presses in and out. You want to depress that screw as you push the mag catch out and turn it. And you'll find that there's a little slot inside the mag catch lock that the screw turns into, and that's where you're trying to keep that screw. If you don't depress the screw as you're pushing the mag catch out towards you, what you can do is you can cause damage to your frame, to the polymer frame, and it will make the mag catch lock not stay in the gun anymore. So that's very important. I don't actually recommend taking this out very often. It's not necessary for the cleaning of the gun at all, but a lot of guys like to take this apart, you know, every 10-15,000 rounds, clean out the mag catch, and that's fine as long as you do it properly. Lastly is the frame assembly. We have this polymer grip, we have this steel frame, we have this aluminum trigger. Inside the polymer grip are bushings that you'll see in a second. You can unscrew these grip screws. Takes a little Allen wrench. Make sure you use the right size Allen wrench. And you want these big grip screws on the top to be Loctited back in place. And you can use your mainspring housing punch on the edge of that bushing to just knock it free, both sides. That one's stuck in there because of grease. But you want Loctite when you put these back in. You want to Loctite these screws with a little red Loctite or blue, whatever suits your fancy. But it's also very important to make sure that they're oriented correctly when you put them back in. They have a flat on the top, and you can see this one. The owner of this gun has put this back together incorrectly at some point, and he's actually bent the bushing. What will happen over time is if you do that enough times, the bushing will crack and it'll break, and then the grip won't stay on the gun anymore. Now lastly, on the grip frame to frame interface, you have this little tiny screw up front, and you need 2 small Allen wrenches to take this out. This screw does not get Loctited in place. If you Loctite this screw in place, you will never get it out again without damaging the polymer frame. I know because I've tried it, I've seen it tried, and it doesn't work well. This is a self-locking screw. They do fall out from time to time if they're not tightened properly, but they're not expensive to replace. Once we have those 3 sets of screws out, then the frame will come off the grip body like that. Now you can take the trigger out the back of the grip body and you can clean it. You can put a little bit of light grease on there and you're ready to reassemble your 2019 or 2011 style pistol. Now let's talk about the reassembly. We're going to take our trigger, we're going to make sure it's oriented correctly with the over travel screw down, and we're going to put it back into our grip body here. We're going to take our frame, we're going to put it back on the grip body. Now we have those 2 little tiny screws. Be careful not to lose them. One of them will have a tenon on the end of it. That's the locking part that locks to the other screw. We're going to put that back into the frame like that. We're going to take the other side of the screw like this, and we're going to put it back in. Once we have it installed, we're going to put both Allen wrenches on it at one time, and we're going to torque it down and tighten it up, because we don't want them little boogers falling out, and they will fall out occasionally. So just tighten them up. Now we're ready to put the bushings back in. Again, these little bushings, they have to be oriented properly. The flat side goes up, so what you do is you put it in there, and I'm not Loctiting this one in place right now because we have some work to do yet on this gun, but you want to press the frame down into the grip body and put the bushing in. You see it in there. Then you take your Allen screw, and I'm keeping my index finger on my left hand against that bushing to make sure it stays in the proper position as I'm tightening the screw back down. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You can hear it snap into place. Tighten it down good and tight. Now you might notice that I didn't do anything with the bottom screws because they're just there for cosmetics. They don't do anything for the function of the gun. They don't need to be taken out. In fact, if you do take them out, you may not get them back to stay back in long term in the future. Plunger assembly is already in, so I'm going to install the sear and disconnector now. I'm going to take those and place them in the frame. And the disconnector goes up through the hole in the frame right there. And then I'm going to use my alignment tool to align the sear and the disconnector hole so that I can drop my sear pin back through both of them at the same time. And I'll give it a tap on the table and make sure that they're both hooked up by that pin and they're not coming out. Now I'm going to take my hammer. I'm going to put it back. It goes in the front hole. That's the hammer hole. Take my hammer pin, drop it back in place. I'm going to make sure my hammer pivots freely. Now I'm going to take my sear spring, and there's a little slot in the bottom of the frame right there where the lip on the sear spring locks into, and I'm going to lay my sear spring into the frame with the left hand spring laying on the back left side of the sear legs. Now I'm going to take my mainspring housing. I'm going to slide that back in a little ways so that I can get my strut to drop down inside of that mainspring housing where the plunger is. Now I'm going to take a pause, and I'm going to put my mag catch lock back together, depress it, and turn it into its slot. Now when I go back to install this mag catch into the gun, remember I want you to push in with your screwdriver out on the mag catch and turn it until it unlocks. Now you've safely installed and uninstalled the mag catch lock without doing damage to the frame. You don't want to damage your frame body, folks, because those are very expensive. It looks like a cheap, inexpensive part, but they're fairly expensive part to have to replace. And they do have to be fit to the frame and the trigger components. So try not to damage that if you feel the need to take it out. Alright, so now we're back to the back of the gun here. And we have our grip safety. We're going to slide it into place. And we're going to put the ejection port side of the thumb safety in the gun like that. Now we can safely depress the mainspring housing all the way up into position with the mag well, if you have one on your gun. And we're going to take this pin and we're going to depress the mag well up, and this is a little difficult. You can use a table if you don't have big hands like me, but you're going to depress the mag well up in order to push that pin in place. And you can just tap it in place like that and get it close. And then in order to seat it, use your mainspring housing tool so you don't damage your mag well. Cock the hammer back, make sure it functions properly. Remember not to drop the hammer without the slide on. Now we can take our, I like to put the left side of the thumb safety on after I have my slide. So now we'll go to reassembly of the slide assembly and putting that on the lower. Alright, here we have our slide again. We got her all cleaned up. We're ready to reassemble our slide assembly. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our small parts, our firing pin, spring, plate, and extractor, and we're going to put them back in the gun. One thing to note is I get this question a lot, and this gun actually had it installed incorrectly when I disassembled the gun to inspect it. Your firing pin spring should be tight as you put it on. It should get tight. It's held in place like that on purpose so that when you take the gun apart and it flies out, it doesn't go too far. If you have it on the other way and it's loose like that, that's incorrect. So flip it around, make sure it's on there tight, that way it's capturing itself. Alright, we're going to put our firing pin back in the slide. We're going to put our ejector, or our extractor rather, back in the slide. Actually, we should do that in opposite order, like this. Snap that ejector up in there, and make sure it's flush with the back of the slide. You can hold it with your finger from the front. Put your firing pin in. Now we're going to depress the firing pin and slide that firing pin plate up in. And you can take any one of your tools and use it now to depress the firing pin and slide the firing pin plate into battery there. And make sure that you check your firing pin and it goes fore and aft freely. The firing pin channel and the extractor channel should be cleaned on a fairly regular basis, every 5,000 or so rounds. Now we're going to take our barrel and our bushing. We're going to put our bushing back on our barrel, proper orientation. Put our barrel back in, and your bushing's going to be tight. If you don't have a bushing gun, if you have a comp gun or a cone gun, the barrel just goes right in. Bushing's going to be tight, so there's no harm in just giving it a light tap. You notice I use a brass hammer. You can use a brass or a rubber or wood hammer so it doesn't mar. And just tap that into battery. You're not doing any harm, it's brass. And then turn your bushing to the right orientation. Alright, now we're going to take our recoil assembly. We've taken it apart, we've cleaned it. We're going to depress the recoil spring and put our little paper clip back in its hole, like that. Now our recoil assembly is captured, and we can reinstall it. You have to have the link in the rearward position, and you can reinstall the recoil assembly from the back like that. And you want to leave that captured while you're putting your slide on your frame, because it'll make it easier to get it all together. Slide it back like that, and hopefully you can see there that my link is lined up. I'm going to take my slide stop, slip it into the frame hole, line it up on the slide. Now I can release the tension and pull my little paper clip out, and let my slide go home. Last piece is the thumb safety with the hammer back. Put the thumb safety in. We use these little tools that were made by Packmeyer called a widget. You can use a credit card, you can use a paper clip, you can use anything you want really that doesn't mar up the frame or the slide or the thumb safety to press your plunger tube assembly into the gun as you're pushing the thumb safety in and snap it in place. Final thing you want to do after you've got the gun completely reassembled is cycle the gun, do a quick safety check, make sure that the gun is working properly, and you're ready to go back to the range. Thank you for joining me. This is Joe Chambers bringing you a disassembly of 2011 and 2019 pistol styles from 1911 University here at Chambers Custom in Wilbur, Nebraska.